AI is it's everywhere in our schools now, right? You've got lesson planners, tutoring bots, the whole shebang. And it's all promising this huge revolution in education. But that brings up a really big question. What does the actual evidence say it's doing? So we're going to dive into what the data tells us, using a major new report from Stanford as our guide. You know, there's a really good chance that your kid's school, right now, is making some pretty big bets on which AI tools to buy. But here's the thing. They're doing it with very little solid proof to guide them. And this isn't just some academic debate. This stuff directly affects our kids, their teachers, and honestly, the future of how we learn. It helps to think of this whole moment as a kind of educational gold rush. There's this immense pressure on schools to jump on the AI bandwagon, to get students ready for the future. But the tech is moving so much faster than the people who are trying to figure out if it actually works. So that brings us to the big question for this explainer. If you strip away all the hype, all the marketing slogans, what is AI really doing for students and teachers? What does the hard data actually tell us? And just look at this graph. It shows the absolute explosion of interest perfectly. In early 2023, there were, less than 30 academic papers on this. Fast forward less than 3 years, and that number is over 800. I mean, the research world is just scrambling to keep up. But having all that research creates its own problem, doesn't it? How do you separate the facts from the fluff? Well, that's exactly what these Stanford researchers set out to do, to find that tiny needle of truth in this giant haystack of studies. So let's start with that haystack. The team gathered a whopping 1,818 academic papers. That's everything researchers have published on AI in K-12 schools. But, and this is a huge but, not all research is created equal. See, if you really want to know if a tool works, you need something called causal evidence. It's the gold standard. It's the difference between saying, hey, students who use this app also happen to get good grades, and being able to prove this app caused students to get better grades. It's a massive difference.
And here it is. This is the moment that kind of changes the whole story. Out of those 818 papers, how many do you think met that gold standard? Take a guess. It was just 20. That's it. Only 20 studies were rigorous enough to really prove what these tools do.
Now, 20 might sound shockingly small, and honestly, it is. But right now, it's the best, most reliable guide we have. So, what can we learn from these 20 studies? All right, the first big insight is all about students. And what jumps out from the data is this super important difference between doing a task well in the moment and actually truly learning something for the long haul.
So, the evidence is pretty darn clear on this part. When students are actively using an AI tool, they do better on whatever they're working on. We see it in math problems, in coding projects, in writing essays. They get better results right then and there.
But, and this is the big catch, this is the core of the issue. While students do better with the AI, those improvements often shrink or even vanish completely when you test them later without the tool. So the AI helps them do the thing, but it doesn't always help them learn the thing. This quote from one of the researchers, Dr. Matthias Stadler, just hits the nail on the head. Making a task feel easier doesn't mean you're learning more. In fact, you know that productive struggle where you really have to think for yourself? That's often where the real learning sticks. And if AI just erases that struggle, it might actually be getting in the way. So the takeaway here isn't just, is AI good or bad? It's that the design of the tool is everything. The report found that tools built with what they call pedagogical guardrails, AI tutors that guide a student step by step instead of just spitting out the answer, those are the ones that show real promise for actual long-term learning. Okay, so that's the student side of the coin. But AI isn't just for kids, right? A big chunk of the research is looking at how these tools can help teachers and tutors. And in this area, the news from those 20 studies is actually pretty good. 2 main benefits really stood out. First, efficiency. Teachers using AI for lesson prep saved time, and the quality of their lessons didn't drop. And second, it helped scale expertise. AI that gave automated feedback to tutors actually improved how well they taught, which is a huge deal for newer tutors. So, okay, we've got a few early promising findings, but, and this is a big but, maybe the single most important thing this report found is what we don't know. The research map has these huge, glaring blank spots on it. And you can see it right here in the report's own data. Almost all of the high-quality research is focused on students. And within that, it's overwhelmingly focused on math outcomes. Other subjects just aren't getting the same attention.
But the gaps are even bigger than that. When you dig into those 20 gold standard studies, you realize we know almost nothing about some of the most fundamental parts of school. How does AI affect educational equity? What does it do to a student's social skills or their emotional well-being? What about their safety? The real causal evidence on these topics? It's pretty much zero.
And let's be really clear here. These aren't just minor details we can figure out later. This stuff is the absolute core of what education is supposed to be about. We have to understand not just how AI impacts test scores, but how it shapes our kids as human beings.
Which leaves us with this one last thought. We know AI is incredible at giving us answers. The modern world is literally being rebuilt around that fact. But the whole point of education isn't just finding answers. It's about learning how to think, how to reason, and how to ask the right questions. And whether the AI tools we have today are helping or hurting that goal, well, that's the biggest unanswered question of them all.